Okay, welcome to Kapitel Tzadik Zayin, chapter 97. Again, this is another chapter that we say every Friday night. Not only on Friday night, we also say this. You know, when we say this, at least in my siddur. I don't know, but I'm assuming, I think you also do it in Ashkenaz. We say this right before Kol Nidrei. Right before Kol Nidrei. Or you might be familiar because of the last two psukim, Er Zaru Ala Tzadik, Eliyishalev Simcha, and Simcha Tzikim Hashem, Zed Lizech Kachrei. If you have a good chazan, he plays, he spends some time on those last two psukim. So I don't know if it's, but I think that it's across the board that we say it. The Ashkenazim also say it. Anyways, okay.
Not only do we say it, but we repeat it.
So some say it 3 times. Yeah, I don't
say
in
it
Chabad
three times.
Yeah, in Chabad we say it once. Kol Nidre we say 3 times, but this chapter we say it once. Yeah. I saw that some say it 3 times. Good. So that's it. So obviously everybody already knows the chapter, so we can move along. No, okay. Yeah. Okay.
All right, short class.
Exactly. Okay. So Hashem Malach Tagil Aretz. God is king, right? Tagil Aretz. The earth should be ecstatic, should be dancing. It's a dancing type of happy. Yismechu iyim rabin. Many of the islands should be very joyful. Anon va'arafel svivav. Anon is a cloud. Arafel is a darkness, but a darkness of makas chishach, like a strong darkness. Svivav surrounds or is around. Yeah, surrounds. Tzedek, righteousness, mishpat, justice, mechain kisai is the foundation of his seat, of his throne. Eish lefanav telech, fire goes in front of him. Usilait saviv tzarav, and it consumes and surrounds tzarav. What's tzarav? It reminds me of Fiddler on the Roof, right? When he asks for the bracha for the zar.
Darkness,
No, tzarav is those who are making problems. So from the word tzara, right? Right, a troubled time. So those who give you a troubled time, the one who makes the tzara, so that's tzarav, his tzar. He's the one who makes it, and tsar is the original word comes from tsar. Tsar means eng, means tight, when someone makes it uncomfortable for somebody else. Pasuk Dalet, number 4. Heiru v'rakav tevel, the light of the lightning tevel on the world. Rasa, it's seen, or he sees it. Vatachel haaretz, and the earth trembles. Harim, mountains, kadoineg masu, they melt like wax. Milifnei Hashem, from in front of Hashem. Milifnei Adon Kol Haaretz, from in front of the master of all of the earth. Hi'idu Hashamayim Tzidkai, should tell the heavens its righteousness. V'ra'u Chol Ha'amim Kvaydai, and they should see all the nations Kvaydai, his glory. Yevaishu, they should be embarrassed. Kol Oivdei Pesel, anybody who serves idols. Hamishalalim Ba'elilim, someone who takes pride in serving idols. Ishtachvu kol elikim, or elihim actually. They should bow down in front of him all other elokims. Shama v'tismach tzion, heard and rejoiced Tzion, Zion, Tzion, v'tagelna, and also a form of rejoicing. Also, another form of rejoicing. Benoit Yehuda, the daughters of Judah, or Judea, depending on how you learn it. I think I learned it more as the idea of Judea, of Yehuda, Judea. Leman mishpatecha Hashem, for your judgments or for your justice, Hashem. Pasuk 9, Ki ata Hashem, for you, Hashem, Elyon, are above, Al kol haaretz, over the earth. Ma'id na'aleisa. You're very much exalted, al kala elikim, over all other elikims, all other gods, literal translation. Ayave Hashem, those who love Hashem, sinura, hate evil, shemer, nafshes chasidav, watch over the souls of his pious ones, miyad rishayim, from the hands of the evildoers, yatzilein, he saves them. Pasuk 11, zarua latzadik, light, zarua is planted, latzadik for the righteous, uliyishrei leiv, and for the ones that are of an upright heart, simcha, joy. Simchu tzadikim b'Hashem, let the righteous find joy within Hashem or in Hashem, v'haidu, and let them praise, l'zeicher kadshay, for the remembrance of his exaltedness or for his holiness, which we'll translate more on the second lesson. So this is a basic. This chapter, on the one hand, when you translate it word for word, it's hard to get a good understanding of what the chapter is saying, but it's not such a hard chapter. It's not like such a complicated chapter to put together. It's talking about praises of Hashem and from different perspectives, different things from different people, and the downfall of those who, the idol worshippers or the evildoers or the wicked, that kind of thing. So I mentioned. So first of all, Moshe Rabbeinu, we already went through a few chapters that are referred to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu says this about the time of the Geula, the time of the redemption. It's an idea of strengthening the hearts of the Jewish people, that they should not give up hope, that salvation is on its way. So that's the gist of the chapter. I mentioned in the email, right, that this is Moshe Rabbeinu talking to Shevet Yosef. So Shevet Yosef is the parent of Menashe and Ephraim. So it's Menashe and Ephraim, but it's Yosef as a whole. And as I mentioned, it's ultimately we have on Shevet Yosef, from Yosef we have a descendant, Yehoshua. Yehoshua, the student of Moshe Rabbeinu, who ends up taking over the leadership from Moshe Rabbeinu. He conquers the land of Canaan, which ultimately paves way for us to have Eretz Yisrael forevermore. And this caused the earth and everything in it to rejoice. And this is Hashem Tagel Aretz, the whole idea of rejoicing, which is mentioned multiple times in this chapter, is the rejoicing of the Jewish people in the land of Israel through Yeshua. So it's whether it's from that time or a prophecy about the future. The Alshich mentions that it's also somewhat of a continuation of previous chapter, because we also talked about Day of Judgment, Mashiach, rejoicing and salvation in the previous chapter. The Alshich says that in the previous chapter it's more of a focus on the rejoicing of heavens and earth, and now he's talking about the idea of that even the furthest places away, because he mentions, Iyim, the islands. So even places that are very far away, even they'll recognize God and rejoice in Hashem. So that is as a form of introduction to this chapter. Let's go to pasuk number 1. So pasuk number 1, Rashi comes and says, in the time of Mashiach, when everyone will recognize Hashem, so Hashem Malach, that's when Hashem will be king, meaning not just, of course, Hashem, we say it in davening every day. Hashem Melech, Hashem Malach, Hashem Yimlech, that Hashem was king, is king, will be king. It's not something new, but what it's referring to? It's referring to the recognition of the nations that they're going to recognize Hashem's kingship over the world. Not only will we recognize Hashem's kingship, the Metzudas takes it a step further and says, when we will recognize Hashem's kingship over the world, we will rejoice. Right? It's something that we don't recognize, so we don't feel the joy in it, but it will add a certain level of joy when we recognize that Hashem is king over the universe. Of course, we could recognize it on some level now, but not nearly the same as what we will recognize when Mashiach comes. Now we could come to a conclusion. Yesterday, someone texted me, says, Rabbi, you want to hear an amazing Hashgacha Pratis story, a divine providence story? So I don't waste any time. I called him right away to hear the story. And it's a beautiful story of something that happened years ago. And then later he sees how Hashem was working and this and that. He met someone then. And today, their kids are best friends, and it's like intermingled. It just shows that Hashem runs the world. We don't. But these are ways that we could see it, but in hindsight, so to speak, like we could put pieces together. But you imagine when Mashiach comes and you actually see the godliness, that this is not just going to be a book. We're going to see the godliness in or the paper or the microphone. We're going to literally see the godliness in it. That will bring a level of joy, and that's Hashem Malach Tagelayis. Pasuk Beis, pasuk number 2. So what's going on over here? The pasuk starts talking about clouds and darkness, and about righteousness and justice. That it is the foundation of Hashem's throne. So what's the story over here? So the Mitzvah comes and tells us on a basic level that it's an analogy. It's an analogy to the darkness of the punishments that the wicked will receive. That they'll receive. Arafel, darkness. And ultimately Hashem's throne will judge everybody. And how does Hashem judge? Hashem judges with tzedek and mishpat, with righteousness, and with mishpat can be judgment, it can be mercy also. Mishpat could be referring to mercy as well. The Svarnu says that the cloud and darkness is referring to the fact that us humans, we have a limited seeing. I already started talking about this, right? How much could we see godliness, right? How much do we recognize when we see spirituality? Even if it's right there in front of us, we don't even recognize it. So the darkness is referring to the fact that we don't see spirituality so much. And then he continues with the pasuk, and he says that the righteousness, that tzedek is referring to the Jewish people, mishpat referring to the nations of the world, that started up with the Jewish people throughout the generations. The Yavetz also, on a similar way, he says, what's the darkness? Darkness is that we don't necessarily understand Hashem's judgment. We can see it afterwards, and we see how it comes forward, how Taka, and maybe it takes us some time to recognize Hashem's righteousness in His judgment, but that we could see. If we put in the effort, we could see the righteousness in Hashem's judgment, but we won't necessarily see or understand, more of the idea of understanding Hashem and why He does things in the way that He does things. Mamlaya says that it's a continuation from before. The pasuk before says Hashem Malach Tagelaretz, that the earth will be rejoicing. So he's trying to explain what's going to be happy. So he says, even though there's darkness, people won't be afraid. Even though there's Anan Varafel, where people are sure because they know that Hashem is full of righteousness and mercy, and therefore there's nothing to be afraid of. Even when there's darkness in the world, which we deal with terrible darkness in today's world, a darkness I don't think that there's ever been in the world before. This dark, but we're sure that Hashem is still running the world, and we're sure, and we daven to Hashem that we should be able to get out of this darkness already and be able to greet Mashiach already. Pasuk Gimel, pasuk number 3. Eish lefanov teilach. There's a fire that goes in front of him, and it consumes tzarav, those who make trouble, those who he translates over here his foes, Hashem's foes, because he gives it his foes. He says with a capital H. So Rashi says that it's referring to the war of Gog and Magog. We know that before Mashiach comes, there's going to be this great war. It's interesting because that's what Rashi says. It's referring to the war, but the Rebbe once made a comment that the war of Gog and Magog could be a spiritual war. We don't need it to be a physical war. We had enough wars here in this world. Let it be a spiritual war. Though maybe we should be yaitza with the war that the Jewish people in the land of Israel have to fight right now. Let it be done already, and Mashiach should come. Whatever it is, Rashi says that this fire that goes before him is referring to the war of Gog and Magog, and it surrounds and defeats all of Hashem's foes. That's the Radak actually translates it that way. That it surrounds them, that they shouldn't have a way to run away from Hashem's fire, the fire that goes in front of Hashem. Alshich says the previous pasuk talks about what brings joy to the righteous and right? That tzedek that we talked about the fact that when Hashem is king over the universe, it brings joy to the righteous, and that tzedek umishpat, righteousness and mercy. Also, these are ideas that bring joy to the righteous, to the tzaddikim, and this is the opposite. The people that are tzarav, the people that are the foes of the righteous, this is what's going to happen to them. This is what's going to consume the wicked. So that's why the Alshech learns this pasuk, that it's the opposite of the previous two pasukim. So that's pasuk Gimel. Pasuk Dalet, number 4. Heiruv Rakav. So it talks about lightning around the world, literally, and about trembling that goes on around the world. So Rashi says that on that day, referring to a prophecy of Mashiach that Moshe Rabbeinu is talking about, there's going to be a loud noise in Eretz Yisrael. There's going to be a loud noise in Eretz Yisrael, and therefore Rashi says it's a prophecy. I think it's in Yechezkel, that all the fish will even swim away from Eretz Yisrael because of that loud noise. So that's what Rashi says it's referring to. It's interesting. Mitzudas takes it more in the simple pshat. It says Heiru Vrakav Tevel, that the lightning will illuminate the whole world. Heiru will illuminate Vrakav, the lightning. Tevel is the world. Mitzudas says that the lightning will be so strong that it will literally illuminate the whole world. And obviously, if someone witnesses something like that, what's going to happen? As the pasuk continues, they will tremble. So that's on a literal pshat. The Radak comes and says it's not talking so literal, that when it's talking about the lightning, what's lightning? Lightning is Hashem's light. What's Hashem's light? Hashem's light is Hashem's justice, he says. So Heiruv Rakav, Hashem's light will be visible throughout the world, means that Hashem's justice will be visible to all. Can you imagine if we had a little inkling into Hashem's justice? I don't know about you, but I would tremble, and that's the end of the pasuk, right? So Heiruv Rakav, that Hashem's light will be visible, which means Hashem's justice, Hashem's judgment and justice will be visible. So that makes the world tremble. The Alshich says that these psukim are referring to the past, that Heiruv Rakav Tevel, that Hashem's light was shown around the world, and the world trembled. The Alshich says it's a reference to something that happened when? By Matan Torah, at the giving of Torah at Mount Sinai. The Sforno actually delineates and differentiates the first part of the pasuk and the second part of the pasuk. He says the first part of the pasuk, which talks about the light of Hashem being shown around the world, he says, yeah, that's talking about Hashem's light that's going to be shining down in honor and for the tzaddikim, for the righteous. And he says, what's going to happen to the wicked? The wicked will tremble. So the first part of the pasuk is talking about tzaddikim. The second part of the pasuk is talking about the Rishayim, about the wicked. Pasuk Hey, Pasuk 5. This is really a continuation of the previous pasuk, it seems. Harim Kadeneg Masu, in front of Hashem. Also, the mountains will melt. Namasu, Kadeneg, they'll melt. Kadeneg, they'll melt like wax. Lufnei Hashem, Lufnei Aden Kol Haaretz, from in front of Hashem, in front of the master of the universe. It's interesting. That the Radak and the Alshich both say that it's an analogy. The Radak says that the analogy is referring to wicked kingdoms, and they will melt away from in front of God in time of Mashiach. And the Alshich says that it's an analogy to the kings of all the nations, not just wicked, but all nations, that they will melt away from in front of Hashem. So, but both of them say that it's not referring literally to mountains. Philip, per your joke, also then even in the joke it's not literal, unfortunately. But over here it's an analogy to the nations of the world, that when Mashiach comes, they're all just going to melt away. They're gonna go away. The Alter Rebbe in Chassidic philosophy. I don't know if you remember. I told you. I was speaking to my father when I started teaching this class. So he says, when you learn a chapter, you're able to learn the whole chapter, like from beginning to end, that it fits going, like the whole chapter sits together. Because to learn each verse, every pasuk, and to learn them out of context by itself, each verse is very easy to translate and understand. So he asked me, so yes, I said, of course, that's the way we learn. We try to get a picture and an understanding, a full understanding of the whole chapter together. But why my father say that? Because the primary way that a Chabad guy will learn Tehillim is because it's brought up in whether it's in a Gemara, right, or in a Hasidic discourse. So a Hasidic discourse is going to bring up one pasuk and use that as a springboard to talk about some deep Kabbalistic ideas. Sometimes with practical relevance, in a way that we should learn how to better ourselves with these ideas in Kabbalah, and sometimes not necessarily with practical relevance, with just a Kabbalistic idea of the spiritual worlds and understanding of spiritual worlds. And it always has to be based. Anything in Kabbalah has to be based on Torah. It's not something that just comes. So it has to be based on a verse, on a pasuk. Sometimes based on a pasuk in the actual Torah, or sometimes in Nevi'im and sometimes in Ksuvim. So very often you'll have a pasuk in Tehillim that is used in a Hasidic discourse. So then it's not translated literally in the context that you're learning from, right? So it's translated on its own, if it's a lesson that you can learn from this pasuk. So that's why my father asked me this question, because that's the way that's the way we would usually learn a pasuk like that, in the format of Hasidic philosophy. And the Alter Rebbe Taka does this on this pasuk, on pasuk Hey, that the mountains melt away. So on a soid level, right? On a mystical level. What does that mean? What's it referring to? So the Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad Hasidic philosophy, so the Alter Rebbe says, what's it referring to? It's referring to, it's an analogy to our external shell. Our shell that really that hides our connection to Hashem, or hides our yearning to Hashem. And sometimes it gets covered over with this shell. The shell tries to convince you that really what you want is to just enjoy, just to take in the pleasures of the world, even if they're kosher pleasures, right? Even if they're good pleasures, even if they're a kosher steak, so to speak, or something like that, or an experience, right? It's not necessarily talking about something for sure. It's something that you're not allowed to, but something that you're allowed to. But it's not godliness. It's not the idea of revealing godliness, right? So those things that hide and tries to stop a person from their service of Hashem, of serving Hashem. So sometimes the Alter Rebbe says, sometimes you come and sometimes miraculously all those exterior influences, they just melt away. They're like they just melt away. And what gets revealed? Hashem. Milfnei Hashem, Milfnei Adain Kalaretz. We have to recognize that these things happen. Sometimes Hashem just melts these things away, and what gets revealed is our deep dedication and our connection to Hashem. That's what gets revealed when these things go away. So, this is a concept that Chassidus philosophy the Alter Rebbe discusses at length, actually, based on this pasuk. Okay, pasuk number 6. So, what does the pasuk say? That the heavens are going to talk about Hashem's righteousness. What do we need to? Who's the heavens? Who are they talking? And all the nations will see Hashem's glory. So what's this referring to? So Mitzvah says that it's referring to the angels in the sky, right? Shamayim, what's in Shamayim? What's in the sky? The angels that they tell the tale of Hashem's righteousness, what He has done. And specifically the Mitzvah says not only what He has done in general in creation, etc., but what He has done on behalf and for the Jewish people. The Radak says that the angels will rain down hellfire on the wicked. And that's Vero comment. So Higido Shemaim Tzidkoi, that the angels in heaven are going to talk about Hashem's righteousness, right? Why? Because they're on behalf of Hashem, they're going to rain down hellfire on the wicked and show Hashem's righteousness, what He does to the wicked, and therefore all the nations are going to see Hashem's covet, His glory. That Hashem, and this is a prophecy again, right? Like we talked about in the beginning, it's a prophecy of what will happen before Mashiach comes, that Moshe Rabbeinu is referring to. The Mamlei says that it's referring to the righteous that are on the level so high as the heavens. That who is going to talk about Hashem's praises, about Hashem's righteousness? We're talking about the tzaddik, the righteous, or the tzaddikim, that are on such a high level that they're almost by the heavens. They are Higidu Shamayim. They are on the level of heavens, and they're going to talk about Hashem's righteousness. Pasuk Zayin. Now, in a time of Mashiach, those who serve idols will be embarrassed. They're going to be boish. They're going to be embarrassed. They're going to be embarrassed about what? Mishalim ba'alilim, that they used to take pride in the fact they serve idols. But ultimately, Leman, the Radak says, Leman mishpatach Hashem, they're ultimately going to, yeah. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong passage. Yeah, or Elohim, actually, because all the other gods that are those pesel, those idols that they bow down to, ultimately they're going to turn around, and they're going to recognize Hashem, and they'll prostrate themselves. They're going to bow down in front of Hashem. So that's the way the Radak learns Pasuk 7. The Mamlei is on the end of the pasuk on the fact that Ishtachu v'lo yikol Elokim. So we translate based on the Radak that it's referring to all the idols. So idols, we're not just talking about stone, right? We're talking about even creations of Hashem. Some people bow down to the sun, to the moon, or to the stars, or whatever else that they bow down to. Those, when Mashiach comes, everybody's going to recognize how they bow, so to speak, to Hashem, recognize the error of their ways. So the Mamlei is on the end of the pasuk says that Ishtach v'lo yikol Elokim, that the bowing down of all of the other gods is not just referring to entities that people thought as gods, but it's also referring to ministers and big ministers of nations of the world that they'll recognize in the future. When Mashiach comes, they're going to recognize Hashem and what Hashem's greatness, but also Hashem's kingship over the universe, and therefore they will bow to Hashem. That's pasuk 7. Pasuk 8. Shama batismat Tzion. So Tzion is going to hear, and they're going to rejoice. So Metzudah says that Tzion will rejoice when revenge is going to be taken from their enemies, right? Leman mishpatecha, because Hashem ultimately brings justice against the enemies of the Jewish people. The Radak says that Shama, it says Shama, that they're going to hear, Vatismach Tzion, and then Tzion will rejoice. So what did they hear? What did they hear? So the Radak says that it's referring to all the voices of the previous psukim, whether it's the lightning, the lightning comes with thunder, the nations of the world talking about how Hashem is great and Hashem is king, etc., etc. So they're going to hear all of that, and that's what's going to make them rejoice. And that's what's going to make them rejoice. And then Hashem will take revenge. Leman mishpatach Hashem. The Radak translates Hashem taking revenge over the enemies of the Jewish people, those who made the Jewish people suffer before Mashiach came. The Mamlei says, it says in the pasuk, "V'tagelna b'nois Yehuda," that the daughters of Yehuda will rejoice. So the Mamlei says that it's referring to villages in Judea, right? Judea, a place in the land of Israel, not far from Yerushalayim, actually borders Yerushalayim, it's referring to villages in Yehuda, in Judea, that they will rejoice because they recognize that justice, that Hashem brings justice to the enemies of Hashem, enemies of the Jewish people, enemies of Hashem, and therefore they recognize, since Hashem is going to bring justice into the world, they recognize that ultimately everything, whether it's blessings or sustenance or hashpa is the Hebrew word for it that the Mamlez mentions, but sustenance and blessings, where does it come from? It all comes from Hashem. There's no other place to receive that kind of sustenance. It all comes from Hashem. When you recognize that the negative, that the punishment comes from Hashem, so you also recognize that the positive comes from Hashem, and that's what Togelna b'nai Yehuda, the way Mamlez explains, that the daughters of Yehuda, which he says is referring to little towns, villages in Judea. Pasuk Tes, pasuk number 9. Ki'ata Hashem Elyon. For Hashem, you are above. Ma'id na'aleisa, not only above the world, but also above Kol Elikim, all other gods. The Radak says that when Mashiach comes, that's when everybody's going to recognize that there's no comparison. There's no, you can't even compare. There's no, whether it's the galaxies or anything else that a person might have thought have any power, you can't compare. They're all ultimately subjugated to Hashem. So the Alshich says that it's referring to a time of Galus, that even Ki'ata Hashem Elyon, even that in a time where Hashem, after the destruction of the temple, where the Shekhinah went above, the Shekhinah wasn't so permeated here in this world. It went Elyon, it went above. Nonetheless, even in such a time, nonetheless, Hashem's providence, Hashem's involvement here in this world is still in everything. Is still in Hashem is still involved in everything that goes on in this world, even more than any of the ministering angels in whatever way they might be involved in this world. Okay, so that's the Alshich comment over here on this pasuk. The Mamlei says that over here in the pasuk Tes, he's giving another reason to rejoice. Meaning previous psukim were giving reasons why the righteous rejoice. Here's another reason to rejoice, because everybody's going to recognize, when Mashiach comes, everybody's going to recognize how Hashem is greater and how everybody else is subjugated. Anything else is a creation of Hashem and subjugated towards Hashem. Pasuk Yud, number 10. Oyave Hashem, sinura, shemer nafshes chasidav, miyad reshaim yotzim. Those who love Hashem hate evil. Hashem will protect them and save them from the wicked, right? So that's basic translation. The way the Metzudas translates, those who love Hashem. If you love Hashem, you hate those who are wicked, right? You hate, or at least the wickedness of the people, not the people themselves, but the wickedness of the people. And you might say, yeah, but you might be afraid of the wicked people. So that's the end of the pasuk, that you don't have to fear them, for Hashem watches over Chasidov, which literally translates his pious ones, those who are connected to Hashem. And he saves them from the wicked. Miyad Rishayim, from the hands of the wicked, Yatzilim, he saves them. Svarnu says that even in a time of Galus, where the wicked could be scary, Hashem will protect you. So that's, again, a prophecy from Moshe Rabbeinu for the Geula, and reminding people not to give up, not to be worried. Hashem will take care of. There's a beautiful Kedushas Levi on this. The Kedushas Levi Yitzchak Barditchev, right? Familiar, it's a big, almost a rebel in his own right. So Kedushas Levi says that, are you allowed to hate somebody? Not allowed to hate somebody. If you hate somebody, it's a very negative trait. Even if that person is evil. Even if that person is evil, you're not allowed to hate them. It means that I have negativity inside myself. I have negativity. I don't have to deal with them. I don't have to talk to them. But to have hate towards somebody else, that's a negative trait. So we shouldn't have hate. Chas v'shalom, we shouldn't have hate towards anybody or anything, right? But the Kedushas Levi says, what's this pasuk telling us? That It's not that I have hate. If someone goes against Hashem, I hate that evil. It's not that because I have a great understanding of how things should be, and this person should be this way, and this person should that way. No, this person going against Hashem, I hate that evil. Not because of any nitiya, any feelings of my own. No, it's only because of Hashem. So that you're allowed to, that you could have, but it shouldn't be a feeling that you feel on your own. It's a feeling that you feel because I love Hashem. So therefore, sinura, I hate the evil. Not that I have a good understanding. Ich verstehe. I understand things should be this way. So therefore, I like this one and I hate this one. Chas v'shalom. What this pasuk is saying, I love Hashem, so therefore, I hate evil. And the Kedush Levi says it's the only way that you could have any hate. It's not your own hate. It's something because you love Hashem. A fine line in between. Pasuk Yud Aleph, number 11. Zaruah latzadik. So this light, zaruah, planted latzadik. What does it mean light is planted for a tzaddik? And and for the upright of heart, simcha, there's joy. What does it mean? What does it mean that there's light planted for a tzaddik? So the Mitzvah says that there's a greater light, and that's what he plants for. Meaning a tzaddik does what he does, but there's a greater light that he's planting for, right? The idea of planting. That's for the tzaddik, and for the upright of heart, so they'll have an extra simcha. That's the way the Mitzvah translates it. The Radak says that the planting is referring to this world, and the reaping of benefits is referring to the time of Mashiach. So, Zarul Tzaddik. A tzaddik, he plants here in this world. What's going to be the reaping benefits of it? It's not going to be in this world, right? We talked about it. Schar Ba'al Medain is the reward in this world. So the Gemara says, Leka, there's no reward in this world, right? What's the reward? The reward is when Mashiach comes, and then we'll have true joy, we'll have true rejoicing. So whatever, as the Radak says, whatever you're doing here in this world, you're planting to reap benefits in the world to come. You're planting to reap benefits when Mashiach comes. The Imam Loyes says that, the previous pasuk talks about someone who witnesses evil, right? Hashem, sinura. And then there's Chassidah, they're pious ones. So based on the previous pasuk, you have here in this world, you could have a tzaddik viralei. What is a tzaddik viralei? A tzaddik is a righteous person. Viralei and ra, it's bad for him. And a person could say, this guy, he's living his life, he's doing everything in the right way. How could it be viralei, right? Or on the other hand, you can have a rasha, you can have a wicked person, v'tayvle, and he's prospering. This guy, everything that he touches is gold, right? He's a terrible person, he's an evil person, and everything that touches is gold. So a person might have, might witness this and say, hold on a second, maybe I'm not in the right path. Nonetheless, Oyavei Hashem, as we said in the previous pasuk, those who love Hashem, sinura. Even if the wicked person is prospering, I hate evil. I hate wickedness, right? So because Hashem hates it, so therefore I hate it, and therefore I'm going to stay far away from wicked. I'm going to stay far away from evil, right? So such a person, there is a special reward. For such a person, for such a righteous person, comes pasuk Yud Aleph, there's a special reward that's planted, that's going to reap benefits later on for this tzaddik and for the upright of heart, those who stay steady in a proper manner, upright of heart. So they also ultimately have simcha. They have joy. The Alter Rebbe, the Rebbe also mentions this. He says, what's a tzaddik busy with doing a whole day? What does a tzaddik do? He's doing mitzvahs. What's a mitzvah? What does a mitzvah accomplish? So Alter Rebbe talks about it as an analogy of a seed, right? When we do a mitzvah with something physical. So what's something physical? In the morning, we put on tefillin, right? It's leather. What is it? It's not a piece of God. It is, right? In the bigger picture, obviously it is. But we're taking something physical. Or we just had the sukkahs, which we take the most physical. We take a plant and we take the two or the four and we put it together, make a bracha and we shake it, taking something extremely mundane, extremely physical, right? But so says the Torah. The Torah tells you the 4 different things that you're supposed to take and put them together on the first day of Sukkot, right? So that's the mitzvah. That's the mitzvah of Sukkot. So what are you doing? What are you doing? You're taking spirituality. When you say Baruch Ata Hashem Elokeinu Melech Olam, you could make a whole class just on the translation, the Kabbalistic translation of the words Baruch Ata Hashem Elokeinu Melech Olam Asher Kiddishanu b'mitzvaysav. So blessed are you, God, Master of the universe, that has commanded me with your commandments, Vitzivanu, and commanded me to what? To shake the lulav and esrog, to put on tefillin, to light Shabbos candles, whichever mitzvah we're referring to do that mitzvah. What are we doing? We're drawing down a divine energy, a spiritual energy that comes down from on high.
You don't even have to use such high events to eat something. Eat.
The reason why I didn't
That's
use
what
the
Hashem,
word, the reason why
you
I
have
didn't
to
use,
make it the way Hashem created it. You have to eat it that way.
yeah.
It's not like you're a holiday, like you're shaking a lulav. It's to commemorate. No, just eat something. You have to do the same bracha on what you eat.
So yeah, the only difference is that it's a slightly different bracha that we make. We don't say Asher Kitchanu b'mitzvaysav etzivanu when we eat, because then it's a pleasure. So there's different brachas. There's brachas that we do on a mitzvah that Hashem commanded us to do, and then we have other brachas that are called pleasure brachas, that I'm doing something for my pleasure, and I have to thank Hashem for giving me the opportunity to have this pleasure of this cup of water, or this delicious fruit, or this, we've talked about steak before, right? When I have that pleasure, so therefore I thank or I bless Hashem for doing it. But so it's a little bit more when we do it because Hashem commanded. It's a different divine energy. It's a little bit of a higher divine energy, mitzvah va'isa, that Hashem commanded us, and therefore we're doing it. And that divine energy that we bring down into the mundane. But you're right; it's the same thing that applies to the food that we make a bracha before we eat. All of a sudden, we're taking something.
God created this thing.
Right. We're taking something that's mundane, that's physical, and we're using it for something divine because we bless Hashem with it. And then we take that energy that we get through eating it and we use it to do a mitzvah or to study Torah, etc. So now that physical becomes spiritual. So the Alter Rebbe says that Zerul Tzaddik. What's a tzaddik busy with? He's busy taking oir, light, Zarua, and planting it into the physical. That's our job. Our job is not to sit on top of a Tibetan mountain, always my example, right? To sit on top, to sit and meditate and just have a spiritual experience. No, that's not our job. That's what Nadav and Avihu tried to do, with Aaron's sons tried to do. That's not our job. They got consumed by fire. That's not what we're supposed to do. What are we supposed to do? We're supposed to take that divine. Yes, we're supposed to connect with the divine, but bring it down and make a difference here in the physical. And that's Zarua, that light, that divine energy. Zarua, plant it into the physical. And that's the job of a tzaddik. Okay, we all have moments that we're tzaddikim. The Alter Rebbe says this in Tanya. I mean, actually, the Rebbe's chiddush in the Alter Rebbe's Tanya is that we have moments of tzaddik. The Alter Rebbe in Tanya says that you have to get to the level of tzaddik. The Rebbe says we can have moments that we live as a tzaddik, right? In the moment that you're doing a mitzvah and you're doing a mitzvah in a proper manner, for that moment, you're a tzaddik. So, when we have that opportunity to take that divine energy and to bring it into something physical, whether it's food, whether it's a mitzvah, or learning Torah, this now, what are we doing? We're taking this chair that we're sitting on, the table we're sitting at, the camera and the microphone and the computer that is using to broadcast it, and the future people that will see it on their computer. It also takes all of that and it makes it into something divine, which goes back. And the person in China that created this computer now did a holy act because he created something that later on is going to be used for a Torah study. Can you imagine? That is the divine energy that comes in. Zarua, the light that gets planted into the physical. And that's our job, to bring more light, more divine energy into the physical. The Rebbe says The Rebbe says that in order to really bring in this light, the only way to do it, the proper way to do it, and the way to be successful in doing it is by diminishing self. The more you diminish self, there's more place for art. There's no place for light, for divine energy, as long as our egos are in the way. So the Rebbe learns in this pasuk, talks about this idea about diminishing ego. The more you diminish ego, then there's more place for divine energy. There's more place for divine light, and to make this world into a better place. And pasuk Yud Beis, number 12. Simchu tzadikim b'Hashem. Righteous will find joy or rejoice in Hashem, and v'haidu, and they will praise lezecher kachai. So the Radak right away says zecher kachai is referring to Hashem's name, that they will praise Hashem's name. The Alshich says that the righteous that suffered in this world, simchu tzadikim b'Hashem, where are they going to find joy? In their day-to-day, if they don't find joy, okay, so what? They'll find joy in their relationship with Hashem. How do you find joy in Hashem when you're going through troubled times? So the Alshich mentions this, but something is brought down in Kabbalistic works tremendously. How do you find joy if you're going through a hard time? Okay, so you can't find joy in the experience that you're going through right now because it's a tough time. So what are you going to find joy in? What are you going to find joy in? In Hashem. How are you going to find joy in Hashem? So it's a famous concept brought down in Talmud that when the Jewish people go into exile, Shechina Yimayim, Hashem goes down into exile. So if you're going through a hard time, God's going through a hard time with you. He's right there with you going through the hard time. He wants Geula, he wants redemption just as much as I want redemption. Maybe even more so because he has a better understanding, so to speak. So Hashem is also waiting to get out of Geula. So Simchu Tzadikim B'Hashem. So righteous that go through a hard time during exile, they find a certain level of solace, of joy. By what? By recognizing that Hashem is there with them going through Golus as well. The Mamlaya says at that point, when Mashiach comes, they'll see the true righteousness and justice from Hashem, and therefore they will find joy in Hashem by the ultimate Geula. It's interesting. In this pasuk, it says, the Medrash Shmuel brings this down. I found it to be very interesting. It says over here, Simchu tzadikim b'Hashem, that tzadikim will find joy in Hashem. Hashem is spelled over here with the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, the 4 letters, right? We have other psukim. We had, I think it's chapter 34, Lamed Dalet, if I remember correctly. Ranenu tzadikim b'Hashem. The tzadikim find joy or sing praise. B'Hashem, also Yud Kei Vav Kei. The last pasuk of Tehillim starts like this: Kol haneshama te'alel ka. We don't even say that because it's Hashem's name, but only Yud and Hey, only Yud Kei, only half of Hashem's name. The first half, right here, we say Simchu Tzadikim in the 4 letters of Hashem's name, and over there it says Kol Hashem Ta'alol Ka, only 2 letters. So the Medrash Shmuel says that Tzadikim, Ranu Tzadikim or Simchu Tzadikim, they have the opportunity, they connect and they praise Hashem's whole name. But Kol HaNeshama, the average person, they only get to connect with half of Hashem's name, with Tahalal Ka, Yud and Hey, and not the whole name of Hashem. So this, we have chapter 97, Moshe Rabbeinu trying to inspire the Jewish people that don't give up. Mashiach's coming, even though we waited for thousands of years, he's around the corner. May come today. Amen.